first inspired this idea and why?
The idea originated actually a couple of years back. Veronica and one of my partners, were living in Kenya together, and she was there on another project. Another project or another company that she started that had the goal of eradicating poverty and improving life for women and particularly girls in poverty. And I was there as a designer. So it started there where she just had this curiosity about why women were in prison. And went to visit a prison in Nairobi, and came back, and we were living together, and she said that there was this workshop where women were just sitting and knitting and sewing, but it was just sort of like your normal, or not normal, but it was like women from the village, it's like a community, but they just didn't have any output for this production. So that's sort of where the idea originated. Why not take this resource of time and skill and production and turn it into something positive and profitable for both us and them, of course. So that's sort of where the idea started. And then she bought everything from the tourist shop and said, you're the designer, what can we do with this? And I think already then that's when we started talking a little bit about it, and we agreed that if this were to be something of interest, it needed to be products of really high quality, which meant natural materials and sort of a base level of craftsmanship. And so this is sort of where the idea originated. Veronica continued working on it. I think for her more and more things fell into place because it wasn't only about utilizing this resource that was already there, but it's also tackling, one of the most polluting industries in the world, right, which is the clothing industry. So sort of more and more, the more we sort of planted the seed, but the more she worked on it and took notes on thoughts and so on, it just became more and more relevant and interesting for the current situation of the world and everything. So when she went back to Copenhagen, I stayed in Kenya for a while, and then almost 2 years ago to the day now, she sort of picked up on the idea and did a map of the world to see where you have high rates of poverty-related crime for women and natural materials. And Peru was one of those places because they have a lot of women in prison because of drug trafficking. And then they have this amazing material that we use, which is alpaca wool. So that's sort of when it then got picked up, the idea. Sort of at that point, it fed into just a lot of really good points on a list if you want to create a business that improves lives, in the world and improves the world in general. So I just lost track of. There was one other point I wanted to make in that. Sorry. I think after the experience in Kenya, she also did a little bit of research into, why women are in prison in general. And one thing is her experience in Nairobi, but it turns out it's like predominantly in the world, women are in prison because of poverty-related crime, which is an interesting and really important point to make because they're not violent women mostly, and for women, I mean for all people, but especially for women, it's very stigmatizing to be in prison. And in some of the countries that we are and will be working in, very often women are the sole providers when they are arrested, which means they go from being providers to a burden to their family. So it's like a double down on all the negative for women that get arrested, whereas in our experience, and this is of course generalizing, but in areas that we work in, it doesn't have quite the same consequence for men. So I think that's also why we decided to work with women over men, because there's more impact to make.
So the women who produce these clothes are in prisons of Copenhagen.
Oh, sorry, I should have cleared that up. Right now, we produce in one prison, and it's in Cusco in Peru.
Okay.
So we wanted to go where there's a lot of women in prison because of poverty, but also where there is natural materials and a tradition for using those materials local to that region. So that's why we started with Peru, because they have alpaca wool and they have a tradition for knitwear. And then we're doing a trial project either in the spring or next fall with a prison in Thailand, where we're going to do products made 100% silk, produced in Thailand as well. So that's sort of the dogma, is to work in prisons in areas or regions where there's natural materials as well.
Okay. So the company is Danish, but it operates in various spots around the world, or
yes.
Not
so
many.
Right now, exactly, it's based HQ is in Copenhagen. This is where the design work and the research and development and strategy work is. And then production is right now only in Peru, and then we're doing some research and some field work in Thailand, and hopefully, probably within the year, we'll have production in Thailand as well.
Perfect.
And then our hope is within the coming 2-3 years, we'll have production in a third country as well.
Okay.
Hopefully a European country, either Poland or Romania or Portugal.
Okay, so what are the logistics of all this thing? I mean, what's the procedure of producing clothes in prison? For example, in Peru, where you're operating right now, how do you do it? You approach the women who are in prison and offer them, tell them about your project. How does this whole thing come to fruition, from Denmark to Peru? It must be a bit difficult, logistically speaking, no?
It's yes and no. I mean, I think it's difficult logistically because it's far away from here, and because we don't have direct contact with inmates as long as we're in Denmark. But I think we were super blessed when starting up the production in general, because we have massive support of INPE, which is the prison system for Peru. I mean, so basically, when the whole thing started up, Veronica called the president of the prison system, and said, I had this whole presentation prepared and ready to convince him, and he just said, yeah, just call me when you're here. And so she did, and they just welcomed us in, and we told them about our goals and why we wanted to produce in prison, and our dreams for changing the salaries and the working conditions. And I mean, for them, what's not to like, right? Their incentive is to run their prisons smoothly, and for the women to get reestablished in the society afterwards and not come back. So they were actually really supportive and opened up the whole prison system to us, and let us visit all the different prisons and talk to the prison management and the local, because there's lots of production in prison already. That part isn't new. We're not doing anything new in producing in prison. What we're doing differently is that we're producing quality products, and that we're paying living wage. So we're paying prison as well. So so we had a chance to visit different prisons around Peru and talk to local, production companies that were already producing in prison. And then we met particularly one guy in Cusco that we really, felt chemistry with, because we felt the trust with him, and he had his heart set on the right things, which were he cared for the women that was working for him and so on. So for us, this is how we started. We started by collaborating with the local production entity, because you can't work permit prison unless you have a proven company. So we felt like it was important for us to start off with collaborating with a local production. So we could really test the premise of our idea and our business plan and everything before starting up a company ourselves, of course. So this first year, we've actually been working through a Peruvian entity, a Peruvian small family company. And then we've had, other than being in Peru ourselves a couple of times, of course, and And working with the women, we have this amazing German girl called Maike, who is working as a production manager. So we're represented on the ground. We have someone from our company who has an understanding of our level of quality and design work. She has a background in design, who's there and goes to prison on a daily basis, so that I have direct contact with her and she has direct contact with the women. Mm-hmm. So in terms of setting up in Peru, we sort of already started with a small group of women that were already working for the Peruvian company. Mm-hmm. So that was sort of how we started, how we ended up with the women that we're with now. And then as we went along and we put up production, we hired more women, and that's sort of based on, there's a woman in charge of allocating work in the prison, who we always go to when we need to expand production. Say, do you know of anyone who's looking for the work or anyone who'd be interested? And then there's always, the women, we're very close to the women that work for us. So we always ask them as well, if they know of anyone. I mean, they're in prison, there are 300 women in a prison that's built for 100, so they know each other quite well. So, whenever we need to hire, we always also consult with the women on our team, because they usually will know someone who's interested in working or who has some experience working for the company and is skilled and so on. So the hiring process varies a little bit, but it's still very, colored by the fact we're a small business still, and we're very close and personal to both the prison system and the inmates.
Mm-hmm. So the women that work for you, how do you see them benefiting from it? How do you see their lives? And I suppose there are various women. I mean, maybe, I don't know, I don't know how many years they spent in jail. I suppose there are various categories of prisoners, but generally speaking, I don't know, are there women, for example, who have killed, or are there women mostly who are petty criminals? I don't know these details, but how do you see their lives benefiting from what you're offering to them?
Right, so I think, I'm not sure if we were surprised, but I think for us, it's been an interesting experience to see that what has felt most beneficial to them has actually been the integrity that comes with a proper job and where there's expected something of you and you learn something and the quality has, you need to meet certain quality goals, because we, of course, expected the salary to be the massive difference for them, and the things that would change their lives, because these are women that made under half of living wage or minimum wage in Peru, that are all of a sudden making living wage and are all of a sudden able to support their families and send home money and everything else. So we expected this to be the biggest difference in their lives, and it might be on a practical level. But mentally, we really saw a difference in their mood, their energy, everything. Once they started getting that sort of a consistency in working and learning something and getting more skilled. I think we've had a couple of women in our team that were really suffering from depression when we started working. Mm-hmm. That really changed their mood once they felt that, and I think that's a really important thing for us, is integrity. We talk a lot about that in the company, and I think that actually made the biggest difference in the mood and the vibe of the workspace, was that sort of revival of integrity and being taken seriously and learning something and going from just producing to actually, they've succeeded us in some of the